In this bass lesson, you're going to learn how to solo through one of the most common chord sequences, the 2-5-1 progression. And you'll be using just 3 separate must-know approaches. Hi, I'm Luke from becomeabassist.com, and if you want to have the confidence to improvise over this chord progression that I'm certain you've heard before, stick around. I think you'll be into this one. I can virtually guarantee that you've heard the 2-5-1 progression before. It's in so many different songs and across so many different styles of music. You've got old school artists like the Jackson 5 or Queen using it. If you go back even further, you'll find it in classical music, tons of jazz. Seriously, it's everywhere in jazz music. But even more modern artists like Bruno Mars, Ed Sheeran, Maroon 5, they chuck it into their songs too. The 2-5-1 just works. And because it's so common, it really makes sense to really know your way around it well. That way, if you ever need to create a bass line over this progression or make your own fills, you'll know exactly what to do and you can be confident that what you play is going to sound good. This also applies if you need to improvise over this progression, and that's what we'll be mostly talking about in this video. Now, just in case you don't know, a 2-5-1 progression is just a set of 3 chords that all come from the same key. The chords are built from the 2nd, 5th, and 1st notes of the major scale. That's where we get the numbers from, 2-5-1. So, if we have a C major scale, our 2nd note is going to be right here, 1, 2, a D right there. Our 5 chord is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is a G right here, so it's going to be some kind of a G chord. And of course, our 1 is just going to be that C there, the root of the scale, root of the key. So the roots of this progression in this key are D, going to G, and then landing on C. Straightforward enough, right? And the final piece of the puzzle are the qualities of the chord. Now the D chord is actually going to be a D minor 7. The G chord will be a G7 or G dominant 7 chord. And of course the final chord, our C chord, it's going to be a major 7 chord. Yeah? Now by the way, these chords don't have to have the 7ths on them. They could just as easily be a D minor chord, a G major chord, and a C major chord, but they're a bit more colourful with the 7ths on top. By the way, if you want to understand exactly how these chords are formed, how they all relate, please check out my ultimate guide to the modes for bass. If you have any confusion about any of this, it'll clear it right up. So I'll drop a link in the description underneath this video for you. Now that's out of the way, let's talk about the 3 different approaches to improvising over this progression. Now there are others, there are tons of others, but these are the 3 big ones, the kind of must-knows. Now the first approach is probably the easiest to get started, and that's simply to play within the key using a pentatonic scale. So if we have this 2-5-1 progression, then our key is just going to be on the 1 chord. In this case, it's the C. So we're in the key of C major. That means we can just plug in the C major pentatonic shape and just go to town. I've got a really simple 2-5-1 backing track in the key right here that we can use. So if we just stick to using the pentatonic, it might sound something like this. Yeah, you can use the other positions of the major pentatonic too, so you might start here. And this one. Keep moving up again. Yeah, move up again. Yeah, just the pentatonic scale all over the bass. This approach works well enough for the most part, but you're essentially just using one sound over the 3 different chords. Now, if you wanted to get a bit more advanced, you can start assigning one sound for each chord and cycle through them that way. So what sounds or scales are going to work over each of these chords? Well, your 2 chord, a Dorian scale, is going to sound great. In this case, our 2 chord is a D minor, so we'll use a D Dorian. Yeah, over the 5 chord, a mixolydian is going to work and sound great for us. So our 5 chord is a G7, so we'll use a G mixolydian. And over our 1 chord, of course, we can use a plain old major scale. C major for us in this case. Now, if you don't know these scales, these are actually what are called modes of the major scale. And if you need to know all the shapes and how they work, where and how to use them, then you should definitely check out my ultimate guide to the modes for bass. It's totally free and it'll give you the whole picture and answer any questions you have about these modes. To get it, just click the link in the description, I'll send it straight to you. As far as how to get started using the modes, I recommend being very, very methodical with them. Yeah, just to get familiar with them, go up each scale along with each chord. So when the D minor 7 is playing, go up the D Dorian, go up the G mixolydian over the G7 chord, and go up the C major scale with the C major 7 chord. It makes sense, right? That way you can hear exactly how the scale relates to the chord. So let's bring back our track and do exactly that. There's our 2 chord, we play our Dorian, then our 5 chord, mixolydian for that one, and then our 1 chord, the plain old major scale. Let's try and play these for ourselves, starting on the D Dorian. G mixolydian, and C major scale. We can come down the C major as well, because it lasts for 2 bars. Let's keep going. C major. One more time, D Dorian, G mixolydian, C major scale, just like that. Do you see how this works? As we hear 1 chord, we play 1 specific sound, and when the chord changes, we shift to another sound. Yeah, this is going to outline the harmony for us, outline the chords, but it's also going to give us a ton more options than just using 1 sound over 3 chords. Of course, now this is just the first step. When you get more comfortable with these modes, you can start playing around with them instead of just kind of going up and down, which can get very dull pretty fast, right? So let's try that. Let's play around with these modes a little bit. That might sound something like this. So let's bring the track back once more. Dorian to start. Mixolydian. C major. Dorian again. And then you can start on, yeah, as long as you're targeting those notes within the chords a little bit as well, you're pretty much golden. But let's try extending outside of these little boxes we've got going on for ourselves, and let's see what we can come up with. Let's try again. Yeah, Dorian again. Yeah, something a little bit like that. Notice that when I do this, I'm going outside of the shapes and the boxes that we were using just before. It's still the same notes, just played on a higher or a lower part of the bass. Again, this gives you more options and lets you play the music that you hear in your head. Chances are, the music that's inside of you isn't going to be confined to a neat little box. So extending the scales and getting to know them across your entire fretboard is always a good idea. It means you can express yourself fully. So first, we had that pentatonic that worked really, really well, but wasn't really playing inside the chords. It was kind of playing over the top of them. Then with the modes, we got more specific about playing one kind of sound for every chord. Now let's take that one step further with the third approach, and that's using arpeggios to outline each of the chords. That means instead of using a whole scale, we'll only use the notes that make up each of the chords. For the D minor 7 chord, our notes are D, F, A, and C. Now there's a couple of options to play this. You can play it right here, like we just did. 10th and 13th fret on the E string, 12th fret on the A string, and 10th fret on the D string. And you've got the root up there on the top as well. But you can also, like I said, extend this up to the 12th fret on your D string, 10th on the G string, and also the 14th fret as well. D minor 7 right there. For the G7 chord, you've got options as well. The notes are G, B, D, and F, and you can play that here, just right there. But you can also go below that. Remember, the F and D are also part of the arpeggio, so you can play the D and the F on the E string as well. And the top G as well. Yeah, you can start up here. Yeah, you can also start it up here as well. And go to the top B up there. It gives you a couple more options. And finally, for our C major 7 chord, our notes are C, E, G, and B. You can play them right here. 8th fret on the E, 7th and 10th fret on the A string, 9th fret on the D string, and you've got the root up there as well on the 10th. And if you want to extend once again, you can go up to the E, 9th fret on the G string right there. So C, E, G, B, C, E. You can also go up to that high G as well if you want to kind of extend that even further. So how are we going to use these shapes? Again, let's be methodical, let's be systematic about it. Let's start off by simply going up and down each arpeggio as it relates to each chord. So let's grab up the track once again, give it a crack. Starting with the D minor 7, G7, arpeggio, C major 7. Again, once again, we're being super methodical and systematic about everything. Just getting used to these shapes before we try and extend them. But let's try and extend them now. Up to the root, simple enough. And back down. Now let's try and extend them past the root. Yeah? So let's keep that track going now. We've kind of broken out of those little kind of little boxes we had, but now let's try and use these arpeggios to make some music rather than just kind of going up and down. Let's see how we go. Wait till it comes back around again, then we'll start up. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, something just like that. This approach is actually kind of tricky, right? At the start, it's very possible that you'll just sound like you're running arpeggios, but there is a way to get them to sound way more melodic, and that's to jump around between the notes of each arpeggio. Now, going from one note to the next and then the next, that's fine, but not the most musical way of using these arpeggios. Yeah, so instead of playing one to the next, you play one, skip one, come back, and skip the next one. Yeah? Plus, once you start skipping notes, you get a whole ton of wider intervals in your playing, and they can be melodic as hell. Yeah, if I were to do that, it might sound like this. Let's see how we go. Yeah, see how we're jumping in between? We're not just kind of going up and down, we're jumping in between the notes. Yeah, so jump up to here, down to there, jump up to here. Let's try something else. Oh, that was a bit weird. Yeah? So see how we're not actually just kind of going up and down now? We're kind of jumping in between. All that kind of stuff. That's exactly what you want to do to make your arpeggios a little bit more melodic. Now, we've gone through 3 separate approaches, and I would encourage you to go through all 3 approaches and see which ones work for you. But that doesn't mean you have to limit yourself to using just one. In fact, experienced improvisers will use all 3 approaches all the time and blend them together. Doing this gives your playing variety, it keeps people guessing, makes sure your audience doesn't get bored of your playing. Yeah? If we were to do this over a 2-5-1 progression and blend all the approaches, that might look something like this. Let's grab the track for the last time. Mixture of everything. Scales, arpeggios, pentatonics. Yeah, let's try again. Pentatonics, scales. Yep, now let's try some arpeggios. Pentatonics. Yeah, there's no kind of rhyme or reason, no kind of rules. You can do whatever you want as long as you know everything that's going on here. You see what I'm doing there? I'm just using some scale fragments, some arpeggios, sometimes getting pentatonic with it. There aren't any rules here. You can mix and match however you want to get the music that's in your head to come out through your fingers onto your bass and out into the world. Yeah, that's the whole idea, and it's wicked fun when it starts working for you. The key is to practice each individual approach, even the ones that might not fall under your fingers naturally. If you really start getting your head around these ideas, they'll start coming out in your playing naturally. You won't even need to think about it. Once again though, if you're at all confused about the modes, the scales we used in approach number 2, I've got to recommend my ultimate guide to the modes for you. You'll get the full picture of where the modes come from, how they work, and where you can use them, but what you won't get is any of the confusing jargon that people use that just makes you even more confused. Yeah, it comes with 2 videos plus a 16-page PDF with all the tabs, notations, and shapes for the modes. But it's only for people who subscribe to the email newsletter, so click that link in the description, sign up on that page, and I'll send it straight to you completely free. To recap though, you learned 3 separate approaches for getting through the 2-5-1 progression on bass. You learned that the first one was to use the major pentatonic scale of the 1 chord. So if you're in the key of G major, use G major pentatonic. If you're in B flat, use B flat major pentatonic, etc, etc, etc. The second approach was to use the modes of the major scale. A Dorian mode over the 2 chord, a Mixolydian over the 5 chord, and your plain old major scale over the 1 chord. And you also learned that you can make music with the arpeggios of each chord. And to make it sound more musical and more melodic, you can play the notes of each arpeggio out of sequence. Finally, you learned that you can combine all the different approaches so your playing has variety and people won't get bored if you're playing just the same thing over and over and over again. Thanks so much for watching, I really appreciate it. Go ahead and grab that ultimate guide to the modes if you haven't already. I'd love to see you in there as well. I'm Luke from becomeabassist.com and I'll catch you soon.